concept. This first OOPS concept is done. Encapsulation first OOPS concept, that is done. Now we are moving to constructor. What is constructor? So you can find that constructor, Java constructor. So here is the one, Java constructor. You can click on this. So what is a constructor? So this is very important. You should understand a constructor. So a constructor in Java is a special type of method that is used to initialize the objects. So Java constructor is invoked at the time of object creation. So I already explained to you, constructor is called new keyword. After constructor will be there. Object line, the constructor is called. So we learned in the beginning of the Java, this constructor, so where it is called. So it is invoked. Invoked is nothing but calling the constructor. So the calling the constructor at the time of object creation itself happening. So basically it constructs the values. So constructor will construct values. So provides a data for the object. That is why known as a constructor. So it provides a default values automatically if you're not providing the values for the your instance variables. If it is integers 0, it will construct. If it is a string, it will give a null default value. If it is a object, it will give a null default value. All these default values will be constructed by this constructor. So there are some rules. If you want to create a constructor, you should follow some rules. So what are the rules? A constructor name must be same as its class name. So you should not give a different name for the constructor. Whatever is the class name and constructor name also same. A constructor must have no explicit return type. Constructor doesn't have any return type. Like method have a return type, right? Either void or without void. But a constructor, you should not write any return type. So that's our second point. While creating a constructor, these are points you have to remember. And the Java constructor cannot be abstract, static, final, synchronous. These keywords you should not use in the constructor. These keywords are not applicable at all for the constructor. Okay, so constructor only you can use access modifiers, but these non-access modifier keywords you should not use. Please remember this. These are the three crucial points you need to remember. And what are the different type of constructors we have? There are two type of constructors we have. Default constructor, nothing but a no arguments constructor. That means no parameters basically. That's the default constructor, we call that. And second one, parameterized constructor. So a parameterized constructor and default constructor, these are the two types are there constructors. So what is our default constructor means? So a constructor that have no parameters is known as a default constructor. The syntax of default constructor is access modifier and class name. I told you, right? Whatever the class name is there, constructor name also must be same. That's why you have to write the class name, then parentheses, empty parentheses, no arguments at all in the parentheses. And logic build, you build the logic inside the curly brackets. So observe the difference between method and constructor syntaxes. So what is the, if you don't create any constructor, what will happen? If there is no constructor in the class, compiler will automatically create a default constructor for every class. That's why you are able to create object. Say here, I have shown you already, right? Here, I didn't create any constructor, but here I have created the default constructor, parameterized constructor, this one. The class name and constructor name is same. This is the parameterized constructor. This one parameter is there. But for this class, I didn't create any constructor, but automatically one default constructor will be created by the compiler. That's why previously we were able to create object for the classes. So default one constructor will be there automatically. By the compiler, it will create. So if a class has a default constructor, while creating object for the class, no need to provide any parameter values. So this is how you will create object, right? Class name, reference variable equal to new class name parenthesis. Now in this, which is the constructor? This is the constructor. I clearly explained this in the beginning classes. Each part I covered here. I covered each part, right? So this is the how you need to give. So what is the purpose of default constructor? So default constructor provides the default values to the object like 0 or null. If it is a integer, 0 value it will give. If it is a string or object, null value is the default value. So depending on the type of data. So that's the default constructor purpose. And Java parameterized constructor, second one. So a constructor that have parameters is known as a parameterized constructor. This is the best example. The parameterized constructor, sorry, here. So this is the one, parameterized constructor. See, access modifier, the class name, same as a class name. You should not write different name. Same as a class name you have to write. And parameter syntax you know already. Data type, parameter name. So this is the parameterized constructor. While calling the parameterized constructor, see what I did. While creating object for this class, what I did, the value I'm passing. This is the very special point you need to remember. If a class has a parameterized constructor, while creating object for that class, you have to pass the parameter value in the parentheses. What data type? Data type data you have to give. So that is what I am showing you practically, the importance of parameterized constructor. This is the parameterized constructor syntax, access modifier, class name, so data type P1, comma data type P2 and so on, and logic you can build it. Why we need to use a parameterized constructor? This is a very important point. So parameterized constructor you have to create. So it provides the distinct values for each object. So different values for each object. So you can create any number of objects. Each object you can give different values. That is possible with the parameterized constructor. So there is the two things you need to understand here. For instance variable values, you can set through setter methods one way. The second way to set the parameter values is instance variable values is through parameterized constructor. Through parameterized constructor also, you can set your instance variable values. You can set your instance variable values. Through setter methods, we are giving one way. So please remember these points. Very crucial, all these points. So please pay attention. Most attention you pay here. For instance variable values, you set through setter methods one way. The second way is you can assign the values for this instance variables through parameterized constructor also. How? I have shown you already here. See, I'm passing this. See this. This is the name value, right? This name value I have declared as a parameter and I am assigning that value for this instance variable. So this is the how you can pass instance variable value to parameterized constructor also you can set. This is the second way how you can assign the values for the instance variables through parameterized constructor. Otherwise, you can use a setters and getters. Setter methods only will be used for assigning the value. Getter method is just to get the value, right? Getter method doesn't assign, only setter method will assign the value for the instance. And second way is through parameterized constructor, you can set, see I'm setting, when I create object for this constructor, whatever the value I'm giving, and that, see here, the value I'm giving John D. John D is assigning the value you're giving John D right here. So this will go and assign to this instance variable. So that means this instance variable. Now, so John D is the value will store in this instance variable. If you give a different value, it will go and assign there. This is the second way to assign set your instance variable values through parameterized constructor. So the class name reference variable equal to new class name and give the parameter values. So how many parameters there in your constructor, that many parameter values you need to pass. Like same as a method. Same as a method, right? So if the method has a parameters, you have to pass parameter values while calling them. So now here, you are calling here in the object line. Your constructor is invoked at the object line. So you're invoking in the object line, pass the values. So that's what the practically I'm showing here. This is the constructor. Best examples, I'm giving a live examples for you. And I'll show you Selenium. You can take every class as a parameterized constructors and default constructors. Every class of Selenium. This concept is there, constructor concept. That's why OOPS is the core, and based on the OOPS only they built everything. And again, every class has a methods. Methods is the another important concept. All this Java is interrelated to everything in the Selenium. Without Java, highly impossible to write a single line of code also. So, and you have to focus just half an hour. If you cannot spend, no use of these classes. And I don't think so. That is impossible. I don't know. You have to manage time somehow. You're not doing that. That's I felt very, very bad on that. Okay, so this is how you are going to call. I'll show you this. In the Selenium, how many classes are declared like this. So all parameterized constructors. And the same, if you don't know this point, and you will make mistakes in the Selenium. If that class already they declared parameterized constructors, but while calling that class, you have to create an object for that class to call non-static methods of that class. So, but that time you have to pass these values. And if you don't know how to pass the value parameter values, it's a bigger problem, right? So the next part, constructor overloading. What is constructor overloading? Now we have seen two types of constructors and how to create a constructor, the rules we learned, and what is constructor we have seen, and how to set a instance variable values I have shown you with a parameterized constructor. We are giving directly here itself, in the object line itself, we are giving a instance variable values. You don't need again setter and setter methods. Either you can use a setter methods or you can use a parameterized constructor. Any one will be okay to set your instance variables. What is constructor overloading? Constructor overloading is a technique, so in which a class can have multiple constructors. A class can have multiple constructors that differ in parameter list and data type. So a class can have multiple constructors with the same name, right? And whatever how many constructors we create, whatever the class name is, the same name you have to give. But how it will differentiate one constructor with other constructor with a parameter list? So one you can create with without parameters. That's a default constructor we can create. First constructor. Second constructor, you can create a one parameterized constructor. Third one, 2 parameters. Fourth one, 3 parameters. So the parameter list will vary, but constructor name is same. That is called constructor overloading. What is constructor overloading means? it is one of the technique in which a class can have n number of constructors that differ with the parameter list and the data type of the parameter. So the compiler differentiate these constructors one of the other by taking into account number of parameters into the list and their data type. So this is the main point you need to remember, how they are differentiated. So this is the point, very, very important. And understand that, and let me show you in the real, in the live example and the Selenium, how many constructors are there. So directly I'm going for the Selenium, okay? So this is the practicals directly I'm showing how this each oops concept is used in Selenium. See, you take every class. See, this is a class name, public class. So class actions. This class has a constructor. You see, what is the constructor? What type of constructor is this? Parameterized constructor. See, class name and constructor name is same, but the parameter. So this is driver is the parameter. The data type of parameter is WebDriver interface. Interface is a what data type? Primitive or non-primitive? Okay, so no problem. Are you guys there, or so? Can you guys hear me or no?
Yes, sir. It is non-primitive.
Yeah, non-primitive data type. Yeah, good. So the next class, let me show you. So many classes are using these constructors. See, this is the class Chrome options, and see how many constructors are there here. See, this is the default constructor here, and Chrome driver. Let me show you. Chrome driver. Chrome driver class. This is the class. For Chrome browser, this is the class name. See how many constructors are there, you can see here. See, this is the best example for constructor overloading. A class, Chrome driver class, contains multiple constructors. See, every class constructor name is same. This is the what kind of constructor is this? First one, default constructor. And the second one, parameterized constructor. So this is the one parameter is there. And third constructor, which has the same name as a class name, but multiple constructors. See here, two parameters. And here, fourth one parameter only. But what is the difference between second one and this one? What is the difference? How it will be differentiated? This one and this one parameter only. Here one parameter, here also one parameter. But how it will differentiate? On what basis it will differentiate? Parameter count is one only. Here also one, here also one. But on what basis it is differentiating?
By data type or?
By data type, exactly. The parameter data type is different. Here, the parameter name is service, but service data type is a Chrome driver service. And here, options is a data type, but options data type is a Chrome options class. Here, service is a Chrome driver service class. And here, you can see two parameters. Here, count is different at least, right? But here, please understand the data type of the parameter is different. Based on that, the compiler easily recognize. If you pass for this options object, then it will go to this constructor. If you pass service object, it will go to this constructor. If you are not passing any parameters, then it will take the default constructor. This is the parameterized constructors and default constructors. And this is the constructor overloading examples. If they ask you also, you can give all these examples. So where the parameterized constructor you have used in your Selenium. This is the one example you can give. What is constructor overloading? You can tell. So again, by seeing this itself, you can tell the definition. You can frame it. So a constructor means, constructor overloading means a class have multiple constructors with the same name, but that differs with the parameter list and data type. That is called constructor overloading. Same, you will get a constructor overloading. Similar way, there is a method overloading also. So constructor overloading means constructors, multiple constructors it has. But what is differing? Name is same, but only parameters are going to change. That's a constructor overloading. And that's an example. A lot of examples you have like this. So I've just given one. That's more than enough. And so what is the difference between constructor and a method? So a constructor is used to initialize the state of the object. Method is used to expose the behavior of the object. Constructor must not have a return type. Method must have a return type. Constructor is invoked implicitly. You don't need to call the constructor, right? You just object line you are mentioning. Automatically constructor will be invoked. Implicitly it is invoking. But method, you have to explicitly call, right? So method is invoked explicitly. Invoked means calling. And Java compiler provides a default constructor if you don't have any constructor in the class. But a method is not provided by the compiler in any case. There is no default method will be created for the class. No. You have to create your methods. But constructor will be created by the compiler. Even if you don't create also, it will create one. Constructor name must be same as the class name. Method name may or may not be same as the class name. So these are the all differences between constructor and methods. Let's go and do the coding and you can understand. So quickly I'll show you the programs, then we can close the constructor here. So I'll take a student class, take main method. So I'll declare some of the, see how I'm declaring and how I'm supplying the values for this instance variables. I'm declaring instance variables. How I'm supplying to constructor I'm showing now. So in the previous class I have shown you how I supplied the instance variable values through setter methods I have shown you. Now I'm going to show you your instance variables if you declare how you can supply. Through constructor I'm going to supply, I'm going to show you that. So int ID, student ID, string name, int is, so string branch, you take whatever it is. These are the 4 variables I have taken and all these parameters are belongs to the student. Okay. Now I'm creating a constructor, first default constructor. So what is the default constructor syntax? Access modifier, class name, no parameters. This logic you can build it. So I can use default constructor, access modifier. I can give anything. So it's up to you what you want to give. So I'm giving public and student. So whatever the class name is there, my constructor name also same. So I can simply say one word. So default constructor. I'm just giving one name. That's it. Default constructor. So now I'm creating a parameterized constructor. So again, parameterized constructor syntax. But parameters will come. I'll take 2 parameters. So what are the 2 parameters? And let me take int ID, sorry, I have to write data type, so parameter 1, so data type, parameter 2. So and the access modifier I can use whatever I want protected. So the again student is the 1. You should not change the name. So int ID, comma string name. See how I'm going to use this. See this keyword I told you. So first I'll give this dot id equal to id. Because why I'm using this keyword here? My instance variable name and my local parameter name is same. To differentiate instance variable and local parameter, if I write a this dot id which represent the instance variable. Now this dot id, if you write, what is that? That will represent the instance variable. And this one is the right side one is the parameter. So this parameter. Okay. Next, this dot name equal to, sorry. So name done. So see, this is the one constructor. This is the one constructor, parameterized constructor. But what is the difference between first one and second one? What is the difference between first one and second one?
Parameters.
Parameters. We added the parameters. We added the parameters. Now I am adding more parameters. So now see how you can differentiate. Now I'm building the constructor overloading also I'm building. See, I will use default access modifier and then so int id, string name, int age, string branch. But I already written, right? This ID and the name, I already written the logic here. Do we need to write again duplicate? But how can you call this constructor here? One constructor, how can you call in another constructor? Please make a note. How can you call one constructor in another constructor? By using this keyword. By using this keyword. I'm writing here. How can you call one constructor in another constructor? In another constructor. How can you call one constructor in another constructor in the same class? So there is another class also, one you can do that. One class constructor you can call in another constructor also. That is different. But same class, how can you call? So answer is, what is the answer? Using this keyword. Yeah, it is. So now this is the parameterized constructor, right? That means I need to give parameters also. This I am calling that. What are the parameters that has? First one ID and second one name. So this is how to call a constructor. See, I am calling this constructor. Again, I don't want to write. Again, I don't want to write. That's why so I called that. But this logic will be called automatically. You are not making a duplicate. Now you rest of the variables you define. So this dot is equal to is. So this dot branch equal to branch. So this is the how you can set. Here, yeah. So this is all the. So see now this class has three constructors. Now this is a constructor overloading, right? So I'm covering constructor overloading. I am covering a default constructor. I am covering a parameterized constructor. I am covering a parameterized constructor. And how to call one constructor in another constructor also I covered. So all this, every concept is a very crucial. So now let me show you. I'll create a one instance method. Print all the student is. So public. So void student info. So I'm just creating student info method. Now I can call all the student details, right? So you can print all the student details. I can call instance variables directly in the instance method, right? So student name. How can you call? So directly with name you can call, or otherwise this dot name. So anything is fine. So this is also fine. And otherwise, so directly you can call it. Basically, internally, this will call this dot name. This dot name will call. Either this dot is if you write, or this directly is also you can write. Both are correct. Student branch. This dot branch. Okay. So this is the all the, so you can print. Now see, I'm going to call first a constructor. So student st equal to new student. See, I'm not going to call any method now. I'm just creating object. See what will happen. What is printing? You observe that. So I didn't call any method also. Now see what is happening. So what is this? Which part is executed now? Which part is executed when you create object? Which part is called? Default constructor is called. So when you see, I didn't call explicitly. I didn't call here. Just created object for the class. Automatically default constructor is invoked. See, this I will write. Invoked by default constructor is invoked. I'll write. The default constructor is invoked means default constructor is called and executed this code. That's why this statement is printed, right? So that's when you create object, default constructor is invoked automatically. Now you call st dot student info. You know what will happen? You see that all the instance variable values, what will happen? You observe that. What values will be there? So what values are there? What are the values assigned for the name, ID, and age? What are the values assigned? If it is integer, default values are assigned. That's what the default constructor will do. Default constructor will assign the default values. Now, let me show you, and I'll show you parameterized constructor I'll call. Calling two parameterized constructor. See, I'll create object for the student s2 equal to new student. So now I need to give in the same order, right? Now I have to give this one I'm calling, this constructor I'm calling. First ID, second name is there. So first I'll give ID. So do for, and then name I'll give any name, right? So let's take Vijay. Right? Now you call. So now you see if you call, nothing will happen because here there is no print statement here, but the values, whatever you have given, this will go and assign to this ID. This ID. Now the name, whatever you have given here, the name you have given Vijay, right? Vijay will go and assign to this instance variable. But again, still these values are null only, null and 0. So now you call st dot student info. Now you see you are calling parameterized constructor. Calling two parameterized constructor. See, student name ID null. What happened? Okay, let me take this dot name.
Print होने so भी क्या क्या print बना रही हो?
This dot is so here also you are not getting null. That's surprising. New student 345 Vijay. Okay, see the object reference I used wrong. What is the object reference we need to use?
S2.
S2. So we use a wrong object reference. That's why it is assigning a null values. See? Now you got a whatever the values that is. The same way you can do for the 4 parameterized constructor, we can create object. So calling 4 parameterized object. See, I'm going to give different values. See, each object you can give different values. Now is 3. I'll give different object reference. I'll give I can give 15. I can give PC. Right? Like this, you can create any data. Now here you have to change your object of, because this memory is different, right? This data will go store in the another memory, and this data will go store in the another memory, and this data will go store in the another memory. Every memory, the values will be differently, it will store. So that's why, and these values are separately will store, and these values are separately will store, and these values will store separately. There is no conflict also. But only one, we used one variable only, but still the values are so separately it will store. The name value and ID, age, and price. Okay, so this is all the constructors and how you can create and how you can set your instance variable values through constructor. Also, you can do that. Okay. So this is the example, and you can do one example. No, the same I have given mobile number, right? And you can try for mobile number with